Direct from the Ed Bernstein Show archives, Ed interviews two comedy legends. Hang on, let's go back in time with Ed Bernstein.
Well, it's been since 1959 that Don Rickles has been performing in Las Vegas.
That long?
That long. Explain to me what it was like in '59.
Well, in '59, it was family style. When I say family style, the operations.
The mafia family.
Well, I don't know. You said it. I got a family. I never said it. If any of you guys are around, Ed said it. No, they were good people. They really were. I mean, they ran a hotel great. I mean, I worked for Milton Prowl. I worked for Eddie Torres. They were all good guys, and in those days you get to hang out with them, and it was. In other words, today when I'm exaggerating, when you get a cup of coffee, you sign 4 chits and got to meet the senior vice president. Uh-huh. In those days, you called up Eddie Torres on the phone and said, "Eddie, could you put another couch in my room?" I mean, it was very informal and very relaxing, and they catered to high rollers, and it made it as they do now. But it was a different style, and it was fun.
Well, I know why, but your humor at that time was very cutting. Very different than other comedians, other stand-ups. You were more of an ad-libber and just very cutting. And was it hard for you to get work? I mean, did you have to only do Vegas type of venues at that time?
Oh no, when I got to Vegas, I was established somewhat. When Stan Irwin hired me in Vegas at the Sahara, I was known in California. And so I always say to young people, the only way to success is being different. And I certainly was different. In my very beginnings, when I was a very young man, of course it was tough for me. I mean, they never heard of what I did. But I was never mean-spirited. That's the difference. I mean, I made fun of people, but what I did is I made fun of all of us and exaggerated everything. Yeah. And so that became my humor, which it always was. Even as a kid, I didn't even realize it. When I was in the service, I always made fun of people in a fun way. And this became a performance. And then little by little, I got a beginning, middle, and an ending. And today, I'm very big, and got booked on your show.
Yeah, but you have guts. I mean, your humor had teeth in it, where you would say things that people wouldn't say. Let's tell the story about the first time that Frank Sinatra saw you.
Well, I like to preface by saying I'm the kind of guy that goes to the office Christmas party, and makes fun of the boss and everybody there that's important, that means your job, and Monday morning still have the job. So that pretty much tells the story. No, Frank, I was in my single days, because I'm married 36 years now to a lovely girl. She'd be with me right now, but the jewelry truck blew up. Anyway, so she and I have been married 36, but previous to that, I was with this young lady, I would say, she Miss Dynamite. I had hopes of winning a trophy. And so she was sitting with me one night, and we were sitting in a lounge in the Sands and sipping on a martini or two, and she looked at me, and Frank Sinatra was sitting next to us. So we're sitting over at another table with a bunch of guys, and she looked at me and she said, "Do you know Frank Sinatra?" And I knew if everything worked out, and I made sure I knew Frank Sinatra would be a big help. It so happened at the time I did know Frank. And so I said, "Are you kidding? We're very close." And she said, "Really?" I said, "I'll introduce you." So I walked over to the table and I said, "Frank, can I speak to you?" And he always called me Bullethead. And he said, "What is it, Bullethead?" I said, "Listen, if you'd come over to the table and just say hello, I would skyrocket with this girl. Skyrocket." He said, "You got it, but don't come right away. Wait a few minutes." We get back. She said, "What do you say?" "Don't worry about it." We're sipping. I said, "To you, my darling." And boom. With that, Frank Sinatra came over, and the violins are playing in the lounge in those days. They had those strolling violins, and the cocktail, the glasses are tinkling, and came over. He said, "Don, how are you?" And I got up and real loud, I said, "Frank, not now. Can't you see I'm with somebody? I don't need it now. How do I know if your album's going to sell? Leave me alone." And the whole room stopped. And he laughed his can off, thank goodness. And then he had Ash Resnick, he's gone too. Uh-huh. And they had Ash and the guys lift me up with security guards and carry me out of the hotel. That's a true story.
And Lorna Luft was saying that you and her mother knew each other very well. Judy
well, I knew Judy very well. She used to come and when I was in the lounge, she was headlining in the Sahara. And she was a hell of a woman as far as a sense of humor goes, besides her great talent. She had a great sense of humor, and I used to stand backstage in between my sets and watch her perform. And she had a funny sense of humor. And one night I was standing backstage, and she came off the stage, and I said, "Judy, you got to work on your voice." And she said, "Really?" And she had a bottle of Leap for Milk in her hand and spilled it over me. And I went, cute little Judy. But she was great. She used to have fun. And I'm delighted Lorna's on the show with me because she's a big talent too. So it's fun to have her with me.
Yeah, she's got a really big miniseries that's up for a lot of Emmys.
Yeah, then probably I'll be working for her.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, look, with all these Dean Martin roasts, you're on TV more than that miniseries.
Yeah,
right?
we made a deal with those people. I think I'm going to be hosting those new episodes of the Dean Martin roast, so it should be fun.
How about with the first time you went on Tonight Show? Was that nerve-wracking for you? Were you concerned about your humor wouldn't go over
it's
there?
like anything else. Ed, like you lawyer, your first case, you're a little uptight. But I was so comparatively young then and so anxious, and I just went out there like I was shot out of a cannon and just shot all my bullets, 1, 2, 3, and I was very excited. And Johnny Carson, fortunately, always had a warm spot for me and always found me to be funny, and he was a kickoff guy for me, and I went on that show, and it became a regular thing. It just we hit it off great. He just made me look good.
Your background is actually in formal acting. Right?
Well, not really. I went to the American Academy. A lot of people don't know that. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and graduated, believe it or not. And I never could get lucky as an actor at that time, and so I did stand up because I had nowhere else to go. When I said I did stand up, I went into little functions and so forth and started kidding around. And one thing led to another, and then I got an agent to help me get jobs, and it was a big struggle. I don't want to take out the violin now, but it was a big struggle, and I wound up here at the Stardust and talking to you.
Does that background help? Does the acting background help you or hinder you as a stand-up?
No, it never can hinder you. It was a great experience. In fact, it helped me in films that I did, and it gives you anytime you can get your feet wet in this business and. Whether it be acting or stand-up, it's very important. It gives you more and more confidence because most actors are very insecure, and including myself when we started out, and are very shy. And so all those lessons in the Academy of Dramatic Arts and in stand-up help.
How much preparation do you need to go through in like when you went to at the inauguration of Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
I mean, did you go through character traits of the president, the vice president, cabinet members, and think this thing through, or is it just spontaneous?
No, not really. I've never thought anything through. I do a show tonight. I have certainly a beginning, middle, and an ending, but I never sit and say, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? I never do that. I've been blessed with. I get out there and just wing it. And Sinatra said to me, he said, Don, it's the president. I said, Frank, I know it's not the head of the B'nai B'rith. I know who it is, And he said, okay, but do what you want, but, it's the president. I says, don't worry, will you, Frank? Just work on your voice. And we had a good time, and I went out there and did my thing and made fun of the president and Good Spirit and George Bush and all, and it was wonderful, and I had a good time.
And do you have any plans of retiring?
Why, do I look bad?
you look great. You look like you should be out on a golf course.
I didn't say that to you. I think that was out of line, Ed, for no reason. Why did you turn on me? Everything was going so nice. The man turned on me. No, I don't plan to retire. I got a lot of expenses. And
the pace you're going through now is a pace that similar to what you did 50 years ago.
Well, similar, yeah. I would say so. I have all the energy, and I have all the spirit. And
so that Viagra's working?
Pardon me?
Viagra works?
Don't be a smart. You don't need that, Ed. You're too big. It's a very important show. I understand there's a lot of good talking sparks. They're raving about it. Raving.
I want to thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us. You're at the Stardust with Lorna Luft.
Yeah.
She does a great opening, and you just keep them rolling on there, rolling out of the place, right?
Well, I owe it all to Wayne Newton having me here because Wayne called me and said, when I finished my deal at the Desert Inn, he said, Don, join me here, and I was delighted.
Yeah, and I see that you have the picture of you and Wayne Newton on the wall there.
Yeah, well, it doesn't hurt. I got his dressing room,
Thank you very much, Don Rickles.
My treat, Ed.
With me is Soupy Sales. Now, I can't let this interview go by, so I'm going to ask the question first about your name.
Yeah.
Soupy Sales. What is the origin of the name?
Well, it was an old nickname. And, in the early days, Ed, when I was growing up, if you were heavy, they called you Fats. If you were thin, they called you Slim. And I always, thank God I wasn't born in Louisiana. But anyway, so funny. I had it legally changed in 1957 in Detroit Well, it is so wild because what happened was my kids had gotten into the first or second grade, and one day my wife calls up and says, we're in big trouble. I said, what's it? She said, the kids have been absent from school the past 22 days. I said, where would they be the past 22 days? Like when I was 14 or 15, we'd skip school and play pool or go swimming. But when you're 6 or 7 or 8, what do you do? Yeah. So I finally found out what happened was they never knew that their name was Supman. That was my original name. So they called, they wouldn't answer. So they always thought their name was Sales, so they marked them absent. And so I went to the principal, and I said, well, they don't know it. Can you call them? And they said, we can't do that. You have to have your name changed. So I went to my attorney. He says, it's going to cost you $250, and you can only have that name for a year before you have to change it. You have to have it cost you $250, and you have to be that name for a year.
Oh, okay. Before it becomes permanent.
Yeah. So we have to go in court now. What a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people go to courts every day just to sit and watch because that's great free entertainment.
Sure.
Like from 9 to 10 there's a murder trial, 10 to 11 there's a divorce, and 11 to 12 there's a name change. That's when we'll take lunch because it's not very exciting. Yeah. So the judge was a guy who had gone to Notre Dame, and he couldn't have cared less. And then the attorneys, they put you on the stand, they ask you these questions, like questions like,
are you running away from creditors?
That's right. That's the main thing. Are you doing to defraud anybody? He said, no. He said, when we change your name, will your family accept that name? I said, yes. And he said, when you take that name, will it become your Social Security? So you do it. So it goes about 15 minutes, and all of a sudden the attorney turns to the judge and says, you've heard we wait for your decision. So he says, okay. And the judge brings up his gavel and says, as I bring my gavel and you say your name and I bring it down, so shall your name be. So I had a horrible thought that all of a sudden I look up and there'd be Lana Turner. She says, well, your name? I said, Lana Turner. Lana Turner, I have to wear high heels for a year, But I said Soupy Sales.
That was 1954, you said?
57.
57. And were you already a known celebrity in 57?
Yes. Oh, yes. I had become known in 1955 when I was in Detroit because I did a summer replacement for Kukla Fran Harley for 8 weeks. So that gave me my first network exposure. Then in 1957, I went on the network from Detroit for Jell-O for a couple of years. So that was my first exposure. In fact, it's so funny because names, when I went to Cincinnati, they changed my name. I was Soupy Hines Soup,
right.
And they kept it in Cleveland. And it was the worst thing in the world. And it wasn't until I went to Detroit that they were smart enough to figure out that could be conflict with food products. Like, Del Monte didn't want anybody named Hines, or neither did Campbell's or any of the others. So for about the first month or so when I went to Detroit, I didn't have a last name. They say, be sure to watch tomorrow when Soupy be on. People call and say, what's his last name? They say, we don't know. So one day, the management and the owners of WXYZ, they said, we got to get your last name. So we walked down in the vice president's office. He passed around phone books. He said, well, pick a name. Well, I figured my name would be Trafalgar 48321, But he said, Chick Sales was a great old comic. How about that name? Well, back in those days, if you had a job, you didn't care what they called you. Right. So I took the name Sales, Soupy Sales, which has been all right with me,
Yeah, have you ever done asked to do a soup commercial?
You want to know something strangely enough? And Lipton Soup is from Philadelphia down there. Never soup, never anything, a pie or anything, which is sort of dumb, isn't it?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the pie thing. You did, you're really known in your early part of your career for doing a children's show with the throwing of pies.
Yeah.
And how did that originate?
Well, the pies?
Yes.
Well, I'd always been a big fan of pies, because I don't know if you know how pies started. 1917 or 18, Mabel Normand was working for Max Sennett, and she was doing a film with Slim Somerville, and they were taking lunch one day, and at the time there had been a big murder thing with Mabel Normand and a couple, I forget the guys' names, a couple of directors, and so they were having lunch, and Slim Somerville made some remark, and she didn't like it. She picked up a slice of pie and threw it at him, and everybody got hysterical. Max Sennett walked by and went, my gosh, that's funny. He said, let's do one with a whole pie. And that's how that all started, and a few years later, Laurel and Hardy did that big thing with 4,000 pies. Mm-hmm. But I'd always been a big fan of pies, but like anything else, Ed, unless you have a reason to do it, there's no reason to do it, So, like when I went to Cincinnati in 1950, where I was doing a teenage dance show before they ever had American Bandstand, I couldn't do it there. It just didn't lend itself. It wasn't until I went to Cleveland in 1951 or 52, and, in those days, people bought TV stations on the outskirts of town because they were cheaper that way, property. And so while they were building the station, we could go outside and shoot different things. And one day, a farmer who lived nearby said, "Why don't you use my horse on your show?" I said, "Okay, bring him around tomorrow." And I told the director, I said, "Get me a loincloth and a feather, because if you put me in a loincloth and a feather, you can take me any place, right?" So the bit was this. He brings the horse around in the morning, and he brings a stag. And like when you're young, you'll do things you wouldn't do when you're old. Like today, they haven't printed the money to get me on a horse, but when you're in your 20s, you do anything, So what is going to happen is I'm going to ride a horse, because they're live TV in those days. I'm to get on the horse, and I ride up to a point, and they're shooting over the epaulets of a Union soldier, and I'm dressed as an Indian, and I say, "White man come to Indian country, you kill our buffalo, you take away our happy hunting grounds, what is left for the Indian?" And he hits me with a pie, and I say, "That's not what I had in mind." So the guy brings the horse around, and I said to a guy, he says, "It's all ready." He said, "I'll be up the top of the hill, and all you gotta do is, when he sees my signal, he'll run." I said, "Where's the saddle?" He said, "Indians didn't wear saddles." I said, "When did you become technical director in Cleveland for Indian pictures?" So now you get on the horse, and the horse took off, and I grabbed his mane, his New Hampshire and Vermont, anything, because I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And the horse went right up to him, and he threw me off. And in the wintertime, any place, it's like when you're playing baseball and you hit a ball and it stings your back,
right.
I just shook all over, but it was live. You had to, I did it, and I got hit with a pie. But it's so funny, because in those days, they didn't have shaving cream, dispensers, so that didn't come until 54.
So what was it, a real pie?
It was egg whites or else half a whipping cream. And each cooking show, and each station in those days had a cooking show. And I'll never forget, I went into Alice Weston, she was doing the cooking show, and I said, "Alice, would you make me up a pie?" She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to get hit with it." And she called the manager station. She said, "I think this boy's sick. He wants to get hit with a pie." Because nobody was doing that stuff in those days. But I did it. And it wasn't until I went to Detroit in 1953 that I got a chance to do the pies, really the grand scale. So it worked out really good, because it's very funny if it's done right.
In those days you were doing, you were like probably the most widely watched person on TV. You had like almost 11 hours a week of TV going.
Well, you did those things, back in those days of live TV, and people say, "Well, did you have any help?" No, you wrote everything yourself. You did everything, because they didn't have anything at all. If you didn't do it, they got somebody else to do it. That's the way it was. And of course, in those days, don't forget, the stations didn't join the networks until like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I think the Mickey Mouse Club was at 4 o'clock on ABC or something like that, and Howdy Doody was on the network from NBC about 5. So up until that time, in the morning and the afternoon, the stations had to have programming. So you had cowboy hosts and and children's shows and talent shows, and that's where it happened.
What was the money like in those days?
Well, I was very fortunate, because my show was probably was the highest paid local performer in the United States in those days. Well, when I went there the first year, I made $150 to do 5 shows. That was
$150 to do 5 shows
a week.
Well,
it was all right, because I didn't have a job. And then the second year, I went from $13,000 to $39,000. And the third year I went to $85,000, and the fourth year I went to $105,000, and it went on up, because I was able to command a percentage of the commercial. Like every time they played a commercial, I got $25. Well, for the noon show, they always had 8 commercials on. And the nighttime show, I did a nighttime show, and they had 10 commercials. We figure all that times 25 plus a base, so it mounted. So I was making about $5,000 a week, which was wonderful. I was working my buns off, and it cost me my first marriage and everything like that, because I was meeting myself coming and going. I was doing a show at 8 in the morning and then one at 11 at night. And it was that type of a thing, But, my career came first. That's what I set out for, and that's what it happened.
You also, in those days, were used to music to integrate with your comedy.
Well, I used anything. Like to me, I had started in radio, and to me, radio was the theater of the mind. I just took it into TV, because I know that if I would have had White Fang or Blacktooth, the dogs I had on the show, if I had a guy in a dog suit for the first 2 or 3 times, it might have been cute, but after that it wouldn't be. So I just came up with the idea to use the imagination, so I just used the paw. So it left the imagination of what the rest of the dog looked like at the knock at the door, instead of having a guy they'd come in as a cop, we'd have them wearing a cop's coat, or if it was a woman, you have a women's dress with a bag hanging down, and so you just use your imagination like that.
Children's shows today have changed significantly.
Yeah, oh yes. Well, there are no really children's shows at all. The basics, unless they're for kids under 8 years old. See, back in those days, you know, children's shows were very important because you became role models, and you must have role models because, you know, and you have to lead sort of an exemplary life. Like, I was very insulted, and everybody was too, when that incident happened with Pee Wee Herman. And I don't care if he said he wasn't an adult performer or a children's performer. When you're doing a show and kid performers are concerned, you have to be aware of those things.
But was his show kind of a knockoff of what you were doing?
Oh, it certainly was, yeah. Certainly a lot of shows became knockoffs of my shows. Laugh In, Saturday Night Live, David Letterman, all those shows, which is all right, you know, because, hey, I took from other people myself. The Ritz brothers were my favorites, the Marx brothers, and, you know, and everybody had favorites, you know, that they followed after.
Who's your favorite comedian now?
My favorite comedian now would be George Carlin.
And why?
Because he's very, very astute, very aware, very modern, and I remember working with him on the old Merv Griffin show in the early 60s when he was wearing a 3-button suit. And it wasn't until he became the hippy-dippy weatherman that he, you know, he just hit, you know. But I think he's very funny. There are other funny guys out there too, you know.
You're close to 70?
I am 70.
You have 70?
Yeah, 70.
And you've been performing now for what, close to
50 years, 1946.
And you're currently still, I mean, out there on the circuit. You're performing at the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas now.
Yeah, I always work. You know, people say, when are you going to retire? I said, why should I retire? I haven't done any heavy lifting, you know. But no, I'm at the Riviera, which is a beautiful comedy room, and I go to back to New York next week, and I do a couple of club dates in New Jersey, and I go to Detroit to work a club, and then I just did a new pilot for a kid show called Camp Itchy Fish. It's an educational, it takes place in this camp. It's like a quadrant leap for kids, only I find a magic whistle. I'm Uncle T-Bone. And it's really interesting, a lot of music, a lot of kids, and you know, and it's very educational. I think it's going to be a big hit. And every time I blow this whistle, we take the kids back to the Civil War days, Indians, and we show film clips and talk about different educational things, which I think is very good.
It seems like you keep trying to break away from doing children's things, but then you keep getting pulled back.
Well, you know, it's like anything else. It's like I could have stayed in Detroit and made a great living, but I figured that I didn't want to wait till I was like 65 or 70 and wonder if I could have made it someplace else. Right. So I gave it up to go out to L.A. And you do those things, and I just did a movie called And God Spoke, and up for a couple other things. But I like it. The more you can do, the better off you are in this business, you know.
In which you played Moses?
Played Moses, yes, in a picture called In God Spoke. It's a very funny movie. It's about two guys that make the worst movies, and they get $15 million to do a Bible movie. And the first week, they blow all the money. So in the second week, instead of being able to afford Charlton Heston to play Moses, they get Soupy Sales. And remember what Moses said to the children of Israel: "Stop calling me Charlton." No. And Lou Ferrigno is in it. He plays Cain, whose wife divorces him because he's an Abel. And I play Moses.
Well, you've done a lot of things. I mean, you've done music. We have happen to have a collector's item.
Yeah,
Soupy Sales Says.
I've done about 7 or 8 albums. They're all collector's items. And that's one. The Mouse, that sold over 1 million records. And if you didn't get one, you see me after the show. I got 900,000. I got them up to my buns.
But they're worth a lot of money now.
They sure are. Well, everything, you know, it's really wonderful. Everything, it seems, that I have, you know, that I've used is become a collector's item, which is wonderful, you know.
What type of a show are you doing now at the Riviera, and how's it changed from what you did 20 or 30 years ago?
Well, I really didn't get into stand-up until 1976 because I had been doing TV up to that time, and plays and summer stock and everything. And I always like doing comedy, stand-up, because the more that has become my creative outlet, because I don't have that outlet to write and perform on TV like I used to, so I can do it in the clubs. It's a very funny act. It's a strong act. I've worked on it since all these years, and I know what works and what doesn't. And the answer is being your own editor, because everything you write you think is a pearl, and you can't do that. You know, you just got to be very critical of yourself.
You've done so many things. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, of course, I will always be remembered for the pies. But I guess, I don't know. You know, as you get older, you start thinking about your
Legacy.
Your legacy. Yeah. But you know, I'm very happy about one thing, and that is my hometown of Huntington, West Virginia. I get very emotional about that because in February 28th, they dedicated the plaza in front of the Civic Center. They renamed it the Soupy Sales Plaza. Mm-hmm. My brother said, you know, you have to be dead usually before they do. I said, well, I've died a lot of times in clubs, you know. But I'm very happy about it because I'm starting July 21st, I'm starting to bring concerts in there, free concerts every Sunday for 5 to 7. You know, people come out, and, you know, that's my, you know, gift to give back to them. Mm-hmm. And one month is going to be comedy, another month will be jazz, another month will be, you know, different forms, and you know, you got to give something back, you know, and that's the way to do it. And it's, you know, it's nice to be able to have a plaza named after you. I really am very flattered about that.
You also have worked with a great number of
yeah, that's the great
people.
thing. I work with a lot. I work with great people. That's the wonderful thing. I work with Jimmy Durante, Milton Berle, and Gary Moore, and you know, just everybody, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and Sammy Davis, and you know, and I remember Las Vegas so wonderfully in the 50s when the Rat Pack was, before they had the Rat Pack, Sinatra at the Sands. Right. I was telling somebody, you know, they're getting $80 and $67 for Diana Ross. I said, I remember you go to the Sands and for Frank Sinatra, $2 a person cover charge. Mm.
And of all those people, who was the person that you most memorable to work with?
Oh, Frank Sinatra, because he came on the show twice and got hit with pies. It was his way of helping me. Next time I do your show, bring the film clip. It's in fact, Rhino Video has out three cassettes of mine. The best of the Soupy Sales show, more best, and absolutely the best. The first is the best, has Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, the big pie throwing thing, Alice Cooper and Dick Clark. I mean, those shows were classic shows, you know, and they were so funny because what you saw is what you got. It wasn't anything you were trying to put over on people. You know, it was done, and we did those shows with no rehearsal, not like today. You know, shows they have so much rehearsal, it's ridiculous. But that was the great thing. It was his way of helping me, and he's been such a great influence on my life, and as a person, and also as a nice person.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a classic. It's just the thought of seeing Frank Sinatra getting hit with a pie.
Well, people said, did he mind it? Did you tell him that he was going to hit with pie? I said, listen, you would tell Frank, because sure, I never hit anybody with pies that didn't know it. You know?
Yeah.
And once he got hit with pie, everybody wanted to come on. Burt Lancaster, Tony Curtis, Jerry Lewis, all of them.
Well, I have a surprise here for you, Soupy.
Oh.
No, I wish. See, if our producers and directors, Don, Ron, Phil, you guys, if you really would have planned this thing, you would have had a nice pie here for us. It would have been a great way to close the show. But hey, we didn't do it.
This is it?
Didn't do it. Yeah, we're about out of time. But next time we'll have a pie. If you bring the Sinatra tape, I'll bring a pie.
Okay.
Okay. Right. I'll even let you throw it to me.
Okay. That you join a big cast of celebrities who've been hit with pies.
Great. And I got a nice big target for one.
Thank you, Ed, so much.
Thank you,
it's a pleasure.
Soupy.
Thank you.
And good luck at the Riviera.
Thank you. Can I give you the words of wisdom for today?
Yeah, sure.
Never buy a TV set from a man on the street who's out of breath. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ed.